Imagine waking up to a story that defies the script you grew up with. A story that says the future is not negotiated behind closed doors but crafted openly, by ordinary people who refuse to accept old limits. That is the energy many hear in the voice of Burkina Faso's leader, Ibrahim Traoré. Whether you agree or disagree with his approach, his words have ricocheted across Africa and the diaspora. They challenge assumptions about power, wealth, and dignity. They tug at history's loose threads and ask us to look again at what we were taught to admire, and what we were taught to ignore. Tonight, we unpack that message in plain language. We cut through the noise. We explore the hopes, the hard questions, and the consequences. And we do it for listeners across the United States and around the world who are asking the same thing: what, exactly, is being said, and what does it mean for the next generation? Let's begin with the tone. The message is not polished for comfort. It is blunt, and it travels with the wind of a larger tradition. Long before microphones and hashtags, there were voices that insisted on self-reliance, community dignity, and the right to determine local futures. To many listeners, Traore is a modern echo of that older insistence. He talks about breaking cycles that turn resource-rich lands into poor societies. He speaks of ending habits where decisions are outsourced and sovereignty is staged rather than lived. He frames development as something built with calloused hands, not imported in glossy packages. That is why his language sounds like a summons instead of a press release. It is meant to shake sleepy rooms awake. The first pillar in that message is economic independence. Not independence as a flag in a ceremony, but as a set of daily choices. Build what you consume. Process what you mine. Feed your cities from your own soil. Train your engineers to repair what breaks and design what does not yet exist. In this view, the real revolution is a spreadsheet, a supply chain, a workshop, a farm, a classroom that turns ideas into products and jobs. It is a plea to move from raw exports to finished goods. From cash that leaks out to value that circulates at home. The image is not overnight transformation, it is the steady construction of factories, the quiet pride of technicians, the stubborn patience of farmers who refuse to be measured only by yield but also by dignity. The second pillar is security and responsibility. Here the message is more complicated. It argues that no economy survives in fear. Markets cannot plan if roads are unsafe and communities are displaced. The claim is that local security must be locally governed, that borders and villages cannot depend forever on external guardians whose priorities shift with distant elections. This is where the rhetoric draws both fervent support and sharp criticism. Supporters hear resolve, critics warn of heavy-handed methods and shrinking civil space. A serious conversation holds both truths at once, the need for safety and the need for rights, the urgency of order and the duty of restraint. A credible future requires both. The third pillar is cultural confidence. It is the belief that development is not just steel and concrete, but story and soul. When he speaks about reclaiming narratives, the point is not nostalgia. It is strategy. People who are taught to doubt themselves will underprice their labor, their land, and their dreams. People who know their history can bargain with clarity. Cultural confidence is not a museum, it is a negotiation tool. It tells artists to speak, teachers to teach honestly, parents to pass on languages and values with pride. It tells media audiences to ask who wrote the script and who benefits from how it ends. A fourth pillar is the bridge between continent and diaspora. In this frame, the distance between Ouagadougou and Oakland is shorter than it looks on a map. The argument is that skills, capital, and ideas can move both ways. If the continent needs engineers, coders, doctors, filmmakers, and farmers, the diaspora can be a partner. Not a savior. A partner. If the diaspora needs new markets, new collaborations, new stories, the continent is not a charity case but a frontier of possibility. The terms of that partnership matter. It must be fair, transparent, and grounded in mutual respect. No one wants to trade one form of dependency for another. There is also a media critique woven through the message. It says, check your sources. When the story is about Africa, are you hearing local journalists, or only a handful of foreign correspondents? When the story is about reform, who was interviewed, and who was never invited to speak? When a clip goes viral, has it been edited to fit a narrative that flatters someone far away but misleads those on the ground? The antidote is not cynicism, it is literacy. Learn to pause before sharing. Compare headlines. Read beyond the caption. Reward outlets that correct themselves when they are wrong. Punish the lazy algorithm by refusing to be a lazy viewer. Let's talk about the blueprint implied by this worldview. Imagine a region where small manufacturers cluster near farms to process food at the source, cutting spoilage and capturing value. Imagine vocational schools tied directly to those factories, so graduates walk across the street into real jobs rather than into long queues. Imagine local banks that understand rural seasons and urban startups, offering patient capital and technical advice instead of predatory loans. Imagine renewable energy microgrids that stabilize power for clinics and workshops. Imagine procurement rules that favor local producers who meet clear standards. None of this is sentimental. It is boring, difficult, administrative. But that is how prosperity grows, not through slogans, but through systems that outlast individual leaders. Of course, there are hard edges. Any model that centralizes authority in the name of speed risks crushing dissent. Any promise to sweep out corruption can become an excuse to silence critics who point out inconvenient truths. Any plan to protect borders can become a cover for abuses against the vulnerable. Serious listeners know this. They do not trade one illusion for another. The real test is whether those in power accept transparency, allow independent courts to function, treat the press as a watchdog rather than an enemy, and correct course when evidence demands it. A message that demands accountability from foreign powers must also welcome accountability at home. Now, why does this conversation resonate in the United States, across a wide range of communities? Because its core questions do not stop at any ocean. Who controls the story? Who benefits from the contract? Who builds, who manages, who owns? How do schools prepare young people for the actual economy rather than for a memory of one? How do neighborhoods build wealth that endures beyond a single transaction? How do families participate in global markets without losing their identity or their agency? These are not abstract questions. They are practical, and they are personal. There is a generational undertone here as well. Younger audiences are tired of hearing that everything must wait. They have watched technology upend entire industries and wonder why governance cannot learn the same agility. They are willing to experiment, to try local solutions, to partner internationally without shame or inferiority. They want elders who pass the baton with courage, and leaders who admit when they need help. They crave an honest accounting of risk, not a fairy tale of guarantees. They want a future in which their talents do not have to leave home to matter. Consider the role of education under this lens. It is not just degrees, it is capacity. A school that teaches coding without teaching ethics will produce clever thieves. A school that teaches ethics without teaching tools will produce eloquent bystanders. The balance is the point. Teach science and history together, so innovation grows with context. Teach business and civics together, so entrepreneurs understand regulation as a public value, not just a hurdle. Teach agriculture with finance, so farmers can plan beyond one harvest. Teach journalism with data skills, so the public conversation is anchored in evidence rather than rumor. And then there is health. Development collapses when clinics are empty and nurses are exhausted. A serious message acknowledges that healthcare is infrastructure. It defends vaccination campaigns. It invests in supply chains for basic medicines. It understands that maternal care is not a niche issue but a measure of national seriousness. It tells the truth about crises and coordinates with partners who bring capacity without domination. Whenever words like sovereignty and pride are spoken, the fear is that isolation follows. That is not the only path. Sovereignty can be cooperative. Pride can be curious. The healthiest nations negotiate hard and partner widely. They protect what is core and trade what is surplus. They refuse humiliation but welcome expertise. They balance tradition with innovation. They admit mistakes in public and fix them in daylight. That is the standard any bold message must meet. For viewers hearing all this and wondering what to do with it, here is a practical approach. Start with information hygiene. Before you share a dramatic clip, ask where it came from and who benefits. Seek out primary sources and credible analysis. Next, invest in learning. If a topic grabs you, study it beyond the headline. Read diverse viewpoints. Support journalists who report from the ground. If you are a builder, look for ethical partnerships that treat local communities as co-authors, not props. If you are a student, align your skills with problems that matter, whether in energy, agriculture, health, or media. If you are in the creative industries, tell nuanced stories that resist caricature. Most of all, measure leaders by outcomes, not just by rhetoric. Celebrate progress. Name failures. Do not let partisanship steal your ability to see. As we near the end, let's return to the heart of the message. It is not an invitation to worship a personality. It is a challenge to imagine a different contract between citizens and the state, between producers and markets, between nations and their histories. It asks us to believe that dignity is not a luxury item. It asks us to believe that accountability is not a Western import or an Eastern export but a human necessity. It asks us to believe that culture is not a costume but a compass. It asks us to understand that the future will belong to those who can collaborate without surrendering themselves. Now, I want to hear from you. What part of this message strikes you as most practical, not just inspiring? Where do you see clear steps that communities can take without waiting for permission? Where do you worry that bold language could hide risky shortcuts? Which stories from your own life confirm or challenge what you have heard tonight? If you have worked on a project that turned local resources into lasting value, what did you learn? If you tried and failed, what would you do differently next time? How should partners outside Africa show respect in real terms, not just in speeches? How should citizens inside Africa hold leaders to account without being painted as enemies of progress? What role should schools, churches, mosques, and cultural centers play in building the confidence and skills this vision requires? If you had to pick one sector where change would have the fastest ripple effect, which would it be and why? If you found value in this conversation, stay with us. AfriPol Lens is building a space where complex stories are explained with patience, where competing facts are weighed with care, and where your insights help guide what we investigate next. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. Like this video if it challenged your thinking or gave you a new angle. Share it with a friend who loves serious conversations. And tell us in the comments what you want covered next. Your comments are not just feedback, they are research leads, and we read them closely. If you are a professional with on-the-ground experience or academic expertise, reach out. We welcome voices that add depth and data. Until next time, take care of yourselves, look out for your neighbors, and remember that truth is a team effort.